Hey horror fans! Today I'm going to prove that Michael Myers did indeed die in Halloween H20. Okay, we all remember the end of Halloween H20, and Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, cut off Michael Myers' head. This was the end conclusively. Michael Myers was dead. However, then Halloween Resurrection was made, and they tried to make us think Michael Myers pulled a switch, and Laurie Strode killed a paramedic instead. Now, is this storyline completely unbelievable? Honestly, yes. And it is, and I'll explain why. First, let's review how Michael Myers supposedly managed to get away. First, a paramedic would not be allowed by himself to examine the body of the killer under any circumstances. Even with multiple victims to examine, the police would have at least one, maybe two officers with the killer's body at all times, till the medical examiner arrives to examine the body along with the paramedics. Even if Michael Myers managed to swap clothes with the paramedic, Michael Myers was heavily burned at the end of Halloween 2, so there's no way his face would look normal enough to walk away from the scene unnoticed. Michael also was holding the murder weapon. Even if the cops were distracted, they should have noticed that a paramedic who has no business holding the murder weapon is walking away with it. Even if Myers had managed to make it into the woods, the police, once realizing it wasn't Michael Myers who was dead, they would have sealed off the area, called in helicopters, and started looking for Myers in the woods. Now, is it possible with enough mismanagement this could happen? Possibly, yes. But the next part to this scenario is not possible. After Laurie Strode stabbed Michael Myers and he fell off the balcony and hit the table, we see him on a stretcher, and yes, still with his mask on, but I'll explain how this is Myers and only Myers. Michael supposedly crushed the paramedic's larynx. The larynx is what allows us to talk. However, as long as it's damaged a certain way, you can still breathe. But true, you might fall unconscious for a while. We see that the paramedics and medical examiner took a while to examine Michael Myers' body. They examined the wounds and checked for a pulse and found nothing. Only Michael Myers can be dead and suddenly come back. If it had been the paramedics, several things would have given the body switch away. Even with the crushed larynx, the paramedic would have still been able to breathe, and therefore would have had a pulse. As well, by all accounts, Michael didn't take the time to stab the paramedic in the spots that he'd been stabbed. The paramedics and medical examiner would have realized that the holes in the clothes never went through the skin, and therefore there should not be any blood. Even if Michael had stabbed the paramedic in the same spots he had been stabbed, he would have still had a pulse, and so therefore his wounds would still be bleeding. And the paramedics and the medical examiner would have noticed. Okay, now let's look at the last part of this scenario. While Laurie is driving in the coroner van, Michael wakes up and unzipped the body bag. Laurie slams the brakes, and Michael goes through the windshield and lands several feet away. This massive impact should have knocked anybody out cold for a while minimum. Only Michael Myers could get back up so fast and take a stance that basically says, "Bring it on." Laurie hits Michael with the car, and he manages to grab on. Only Michael Myers could do this. Anyone else at the bare minimum would have had major impact injuries to the chest. After Michael goes tumbling down the hill, the van smashes into his back. This injury alone should have rendered anyone unconscious for hours plus, with so much trauma likely incurred. There would have been blood coming out of his mouth. Lastly, before Laurie Strode cuts off Michael Myers' head, she calls his name, Michael, and Michael responds by trying to trick her to come close enough to him so he could kill her. But if it had been the paramedic, who by some insane anomaly was conscious surprisingly quick, would have taken off the mask and saved himself. Also, after Laurie Strode cut off Michael Myers' head, it landed. His eyes were still open. Nobody other than Michael Myers would keep his eyes open when he's about to die. In closing, Michael Myers died for sure in Halloween H20. There is no getting around the evidence. If any of you disagree, please leave comments and I will respond to your conclusions. This is the Entertainment Wizard, signing off.